Here you've got some of the feistiest exchanges between the seven on the stage last night out west. Watch.
We need to win elections. And part of how we win elections is reaching the next generation of young Americans where they are. So when I get into office, I've been very clear. Kids under the age of 16 should not be using addictive social media.
This is infuriating because TikTok is one of the most dangerous social media apps that we could have. And what you've got, I honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say.
Last debate, he said we were all bought and paid for. And I thought about that for a little while and said, you know, I can't imagine how you could say that knowing that you were just in business with the Chinese Communist Party and the same people that funded Hunter Biden millions of dollars was a partner of yours as well.
You know what I did with my first company? We opened a subsidiary in China. But you know what I did that was different than every other company? We got the hell out of there.
Ron DeSantis is against fracking. He's against drilling. He's been against. You did it. He always talks about what happens on day one. You better watch out because what happens on day two is when you're in trouble.
That's just wrong. And let's just get real here. My plan will get the job done.
Talk about someone who has never seen a federal dollar she doesn't like. 10 cents on the gallon in South Carolina. As the UN ambassador, you literally put $50,000 on curtains in a $15 million subsidized location. Next.
You got bad information. They were there before I even showed up at the residence.
Talking, the thing that struck me, this is the time, sometimes you crosstalk, and then you have to pull back. They know nobody was pulling back. No. They were just going on and on until it was deafening, and then you say to yourself,
to be the last one talking, right?
Right, and then you say to yourself, am I screwing up by not jumping in here? But you saw one side of the stage not do that.
Did you notice how they went after each other? And I was doing some fact checking this morning to find out what was correct and what wasn't, because Christie said that Donald Trump, he only built 52 miles of the wall, and he said if Mexico, they might have paid for it if they had known it was only going to be 52 miles. And then Mike Pence said, no, I was there during that period. We built hundreds of miles of the border wall, and I negotiated the remain in Mexico. And then Nikki Haley was calling out DeSantis for being against fracking. And if you read articles, PolitiFact says when DeSantis ran in 2018, he did campaign on banning hydraulic fracking and oil drilling off of the coast of Florida. Right. But he opposes fracking out there in the water off the coast, but not everywhere else. And he kept saying, that's not true. That's not true.
Right. And a couple of fact checks. The New York Times took that on. First off, you're right about the wall. So Chris Christie has to stop saying it. Because 52 miles is a new wall, but even the New York Times says it's 458 miles, including secondary barriers. He says much is replacement barriers. It's true, but there's no comparison between old railroad ties, which you step over, and 30-foot-high ballards. So I think that's a Democratic talking point that Chris Christie should drop on at this point, because it's just not true. And if you talk to the Border Patrol, they are so thankful to have the 30-foot barriers, and they look wistfully at the piles of metal that we paid for, that Joe Biden is selling off.
Did you read anything about, is it true that Trump added $7 trillion in national debt? Chris Christie
It is. It's a little bit more. It is a little bit more, but it's also kind of crazy to add in the pandemic money when you told for the first time in history the country to stop working, and we will pay you not to work.
So that was a real outlier.
Yeah, it was indeed. And Joe Biden has just over $5 trillion already, and no pandemic, and a recovering economy, and a vaccine.
Right. And one of the other things, one policy, when we look at the polls, the number one issue with everybody in the United States seems to be the economy, inflation, stuff like that. And, you know, Bidenomics should have been a punching bag last night. It should have been a piñata. And for the most part,
not a lot of talk about it.
No, there was not a lot of talk about the economy.